Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Feminine Ascendant Circle podcast. I'm your host, Katie Titi, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Valerie Rein. Valerie, welcome.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. Guys, Dr. Valerie has a book called Patriarchy Stress Disorder, and it's all about how to overcome invisible inner barriers to women's happiness and fulfillment. And I have to tell you, when I came upon your profile, Dr. Valerie, I was so excited to have a conversation with you. And I'm really, really glad that we get to have this conversation on this podcast today, because I
Me
feel like
too.
this is a very important and crucial conversation to be having right now in the world. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Absolutely. So would you like to share a little bit more about what you do and how you came across patriarchy stress disorder?
Yeah, I feel like I've been writing this book ever since I was born. I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
But my journey was guided by this one big question: what's wrong with me?
Mm,
And in my experience of being a girl and then a woman and working with women, when I became a therapist, in my experience, every woman asks this question at one point or another.
mhm,
And this question is so insistent and it drives our achievement because, well, in my life, I figured that achievement helped me get away from this question for a moment. If I did well in school, and then more school and more school. And I got really, really busy with work and drowned myself in relationships and house remodeling, et cetera, et cetera. And then later parenting. And I could get away from that question. It was only in quiet moments
mm.
when that question would surface again. And I'm wondering if that's resonating with our listeners. I just want to say right off the bat, if you're asking this question, the answer is there's nothing. There's nothing
Yes.
wrong with you. And
Mm,
that answer came to me with the discovery of PSD. But let me backtrack to how that happened. It happened through a moment of silence that was created by a crisis in my life. So I was living my dream life. I had 2 graduate degrees in psychology. I had a thriving private practice in New York. I had a family and a home I adored. And one fine day, I was on the phone with a client and I felt the left side of my face and my body go weak and numb.
mm.
And I finished the call.
Oh,
I got
wow.
out.
You still did the call even though
I
you were
still
having a,
I still did the call, and it's probably not very surprising to women listening. Like, yeah, should we get
yep,
that?
yep, yep. Hell or
And
high
then,
water.
yeah, hell or high water. I got out. I got in the car. I drove myself to the ER using my right arm. That might also be not so surprising given that
Mm,
pattern of, high achieving superwoman. I'm going to do it
yeah.
all. I got to the ER and I was being taken care of there. I was being wheeled around on a stretcher covered with blankets, given water. And as I relaxed, I actually began to feel better.
Mm,
and thankfully, after a full day of testing, the conclusion was it wasn't a stroke, it was just stress.
wow.
And that conclusion really it gladdened me. I looked at the clock and I realized that I could still make my evening client appointments.
Oh my
So I changed out of the hospital gown into my civilian clothes and I drove to the office and I saw my clients as if nothing had ever happened.
Wow.
And that is pretty much, in a nutshell, the picture of my life at the time. And
Mhm.
again, I'm waving to the listener who recognizes herself right now.
Mm,
I have so much love and compassion
yeah.
for you and zero judgment because none of it is our doing. None of it is our fault.
Right.
So, yeah, do you resonate with that too, Katie?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Same here. I never had the specific health um challenge with the
Mm-hmm.
face going numb that you mentioned. But it's been my experience, and I've noticed this experience in women that I've known, that stress can create all sorts, wreak havoc on our physical health. And there is this notion that we are supposed to push, and that working hard is the
Mm-hmm.
way, and right, that there's something wrong with us, or that we're not enough, or that we're too much, in some ways and not enough in others. And actually, something that really resonated with that you said with me was that achievement was kind of like an escape for you.
Yeah.
It was like this way of getting away from maybe dealing with the feelings of something's wrong with me and healing that. I'm not sure if that resonates with you, but that definitely was my experience. It was like, I need to escape myself
Mm-hmm.
through my work. And I had developed some health problems as well as a result. It was push. In my early to mid 20s, I was in a degree program that was full time while working full time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very stressful. And, all of a sudden, I was starting to build some success in my life, and was wondering why I was so unhappy and empty, and
Yeah.
had suicidal thoughts all the time. And I had no idea what I was doing wrong, because I was doing everything that society was telling us we quote unquote should do to be happy. And instead of being happy, I was totally miserable and
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from myself. And it wasn't until I started to look at that and what was going on inside of me that I was able to figure out, like, wow, it's just because I'm completely disconnected from um, really the feminine parts of myself I was, and
Mm-hmm.
just being able to rest and be okay with my inner world, which at the time I
Mm.
was not.
Gosh, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm just raising my hand to everything you're saying too.
Yeah,
And
right.
every woman, right?
Yeah.
And I think our listener, she may be feeling this too. And if you are, we're with you. We're all in the same
Yes.
boat. And it doesn't correlate, as you might have already discovered, it doesn't correlate with achievement at all. Like in my book,
Mm.
I quote women who are on the top of the world in terms of achievement. Meryl Streep talks about her imposter syndrome.
Mhm. Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Seriously, like, can you achieve more in an industry than her? So it doesn't go away when we check off the boxes, but what
Yeah.
does go away is our connection with ourselves more and more and more. As you said, disconnection. And that is actually a symptom of trauma. That's when the
Mm.
dots begin to connect for me. this the core symptom of trauma is disconnection from parts of ourselves, from parts of our emotions, parts of
Mm.
our body, parts of our authenticity, parts of our free self-expression. And
Mm.
who doesn't have that, right? And so
Yeah.
you may be wondering, so
Mhm.
I was never in a life-threatening situation. I wasn't in combat. I wasn't held at a gunpoint. What kind of trauma do I have? So this is something that I didn't know myself at the
Mhm.
time, but I've discovered and came to define trauma in very simple terms. Trauma is any experience that made you feel unsafe,
Mm.
physically or emotionally, unsafe physically or emotionally, and led to create trauma adaptations to keep
Mm.
you safe going forward. And those adaptations are things that are now creating that disconnection. So I'm just going to leave this to the side as the
Mhm.
point of contemplation
Yeah.
and get back to PSD. Like
Mhm.
what what I discovered from that
Yeah.
ER experience.
Yes.
That's when I started asking that question, what kind of trauma could we all have
Mm.
without even realizing it?
Yeah. And
I
where does it come
too.
from?
And where does it come from? Because I too, I never had life-threatening experiences. My childhood was pretty good. Like my
Mm.
life was pretty good.
Mm.
But I was seeing that disconnection in myself. Hello, the left side of my body went numb. That's a
Yeah.
pretty screaming sign of disconnection. And I was seeing it in my clients, all of my clients. And
Yeah.
I was already using mind body trauma healing tools with them.
Mm,
And they were healing very quickly from anxiety, depression. They were stepping into the fullness of their lives.
mm,
And so the question began to answer itself for me when I started seeing research on generational transmission of trauma.
mm,
This research showed that traumatic experiences were genetically transmitted. And boom, the light bulb moment. Women have been oppressed for thousands of years under
mm.
patriarchy, and oppression is traumatic. It is
Yeah.
traumatic, and that trauma is genetically transmitted.
Mhm.
So the dots connected for me. I termed my discovery patriarchy stress disorder because
Mm.
that's what it is. We are
Yeah.
born with this condition in our nervous system. Remember, I said trauma adaptations?
Yes. Mhm.
Our nervous system knows how to protect ourselves. And what does it protect ourselves from? And that's the most fascinating part,
Mm.
from everything that we desire. Because
Mm.
everything that we desire has always been a no for women, prohibited,
Mm. Yeah.
punishable, oftentimes by death. Women who reached for their desires were burned at the stake,
Yes.
drowned, beheaded, locked up in asylums. And not even ancient history with asylums, by the way, as recently as 1950s and 60s in the US.
Yeah.
Shocking,
Yeah.
shocking, shocking, shocking. So, and as recently as our, well, in many cases our mothers generations, maybe for some listeners it's their own generation, a woman could not even have her own money. How
Right?
recently do you think that that changed? Let's say you wanted to start your business, you needed some funds, you needed to borrow some funds. You couldn't do it until
Right.
1988.
Oh, wow. That's even
19
sooner than I thought it was the 70s. 1988?
1988
Wow.
was when the law was passed through a lot of advocacy from NABO, this women's association that
Mm.
worked very hard to pass the law. Until then,
Wow.
a woman needed a signature of a male relative to allow her
Mm.
to borrow money. Just think about the
Yeah.
implications, okay? So, just putting this in context, that we
Mhm.
never had ownership of our own bodies under patriarchy. That's a very recent development and still, interestingly, up for debate.
Mhm. Yeah.
We didn't have our own money. We couldn't decide our own destiny. And so we're basically the first generation of women
Mhm.
now in this culture, not in every culture.
Mhm.
We have the opportunity to make free choices,
Mhm.
but that trauma is alive and well in our nervous system, and it's screaming every time we make a choice to be bigger, to be visible, to be more expressed, to feel better in our own skin.
Mhm.
Our nervous system is screaming, unsafe, 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 you're going to die. And
Oh,
it's completely subconscious. We don't know
yeah.
it that way, but it
Yeah.
manifests in the thoughts that come up as our trauma defenses. I call them prison guards in my system.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
tell you, oh no, you can't do it. The inner critic kicks off. The imposter syndrome kicks off.
Yeah.
And then we're on the hamster wheel of personal development, self
Mhm.
help, therapy, again,
Yeah.
trying to fix ourselves. What's wrong with me remains the question. And the answer is
Mm.
nothing. There's nothing wrong with you. We've inherited this trauma. I hope that the case I made
Mhm.
is convincing enough. And if it's not, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
totally fine. But do not at least allow for the possibility that there's nothing wrong with you, and the burdens that you're carrying may have a very simple solution
Mhm.
to solve them that doesn't involve fixing yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much. Okay. So, by the way, I got chills several times while
Mhm.
you were talking. And also, there is so much kind of coming up for me as you were talking. And so they've done studies, right, on the generational epigenetics and how far
Mhm.
back this trauma can go. I mean, as far as they know, at least 7 generations. Is that correct?
The seven generations is a frame that's been
Oh.
used from Native American traditions, from many indigenous traditions. There's been this
Uh-huh.
understanding
Mhm.
in people that there is something very sacred and true about that transmission.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with studies that go as far. However, we have
Okay.
a bunch of studies that go as deep as 3 generations. And
Mhm.
there is one that shows it so clearly because it wasn't even done on humans, where we could say, oh, it's because, people are hearing stories from each other. It's
Mm.
not genetically transmitted, it's through stories. They did it on mice.
Right.
And that study, and I write about it in the book, in that study, neuroscientists introduced the smell of cherry blossoms to mice,
Mhm.
and simultaneously they zapped their feet with mild electric shocks. Later, the mice were bred, and their children and their grandchildren, when exposed to the smell of cherry blossoms, showed a strong fear and anxiety reaction.
Hmm. That's so
So,
interesting.
that is PSD for you. PSD
Yeah.
is women fearing the smell of cherry blossoms. Cherry blossoms is everything that we desire,
Mhm.
that women before us reaching for that got electric shocks
Right.
for.
Yeah.
So that's what we feel. And that's why, for our listener right now, you may be quote unquote holding yourself back from certain things. It's not you,
Yeah.
it's your nervous system saying
Mm.
unsafe. It's your trauma adaptations. Or you may be playing big, you may be doing your mindset work and saying, I can do it, I can do it. And good for you.
Mhm.
But be careful, because if your nervous system is, the trauma is still in the nervous system, that means that it's constantly signaling unsafe. The
Yeah.
system is in overdrive. And then we have health fallouts. We have adrenal fatigue,
Mhm.
hormonal imbalances, unwanted weight gain or weight loss, digestive problems, you name it, autoimmune. Gosh,
Mhm.
most of the autoimmune conditions
Mhm.
predominantly are suffered by women. In the
Yeah.
case of lupus, it's 90% women. So that
Wow.
tells you something, right? That is not just on the surface, it's deeper, it's more than meets the eye. And in my view, we owe it to ourselves and to future generations, by the way, we owe to not pass this down to our daughters.
Yes. Yeah.
And we can heal right here, right now.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you that, Valerie. Do you believe, or I guess has it been shown in one way or another, that if we do the healing work on ourselves and our nervous systems, is it possible to kind of like stop this
Yeah,
PSD in its tracks? For
absolutely.
our listeners who have had kids or are having kids, um, is it possible for, like, can we make it so that the buck stops with us, I guess is what I'm asking.
100%. And yes, epigenetics shows us that not only trauma gets passed down, but healing gets passed down as well.
Mm.
So when we resolve something, then it's good. Going forward, it's clear for our children and for those around us in our life right now, because if we don't act out from trauma being triggered, which gets
Mhm.
triggered all the time for us,
Yeah.
then we're less reactive. There are less arguments. There's less tension. There
Mm.
is less fatigue. There is more joy. There is more fulfillment, satisfaction, pleasure,
Mm.
connection, intimacy. Abundance, by the way, is a
Yeah.
big one too, and
Mhm.
and this ability to live on purpose, show up fully with your gifts in the world, that becomes possible. And for those who already have kids and they're like, oh my gosh, I screwed up my children, it's too late for me. No. So
No.
I started this work when I already had my daughter, and I've seen, she's now 9, and I've seen the change in her as I was diving deeper into my own healing, which I do every day.
Yeah.
I do the same practices I teach my clients and students, because to go higher, we need to go deeper. That's just the fact of this journey.
Mhm.
So, my daughter has unfurled so much in her own authenticity, because as I carry more permission in my system to be
Mhm.
fully authentically expressed,
Mhm.
so does she.
Mm.
And that's the beauty to behold. Like, she is not prisoner to societal expectations, like she is not obsessed with looks or other things that patriarchy tells us we should judge ourselves by.
Mm. Yeah.
And that, to me, this is the most joyful thing. This is my big why.
Yeah. You're setting an example for her. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I want to live in the world where every woman is my daughter's role model. Every woman is awake to her
Mm.
own beauty, her own power, her own worth. She embodies it, she carries it. It's unquestionable,
Mhm.
it's unconditional. Like, think
Yeah.
about what a world we can create, because that woman is unstoppable. There is no problem in the world women cannot solve when they get together and they don't have these internal barriers. No problem that we cannot solve.
This is so true. Gosh, I love so much of what you're sharing today. Thank you so much. And there's something I wanted to connect on too is, you talked briefly about a few different things. We talked about how we've been kind of limited over the years financially, and from expressing or really experiencing pleasure,
Mm,
and how you know the patriarchy kind of like in our nervous systems kind of has this like death grip, and so it's like we are doing this to ourselves. It's like almost it's a self-sabotage,
mm,
right? Because it's so ingrained because of what we've experienced in the past. um, and so we talked briefly about financials, and I did another podcast I didn't think two podcast episodes about finances and women,
mm.
and it's so interesting to see that, like, even there are a lot of women out there who they're very financially successful but still have, like, they receive lots of money in their jobs and their businesses, etc., and there's many women out there who are having a hard time managing their finances,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of self-sabotage and
yeah,
shame around money. And not only there's that, but as you'd mentioned, I mean, shoot, I was born in the 80s, that is a very recent time period for women to not have been able to manage their own money. So now all of a sudden, women have an opportunity to manage some, their abundance,
yeah.
um, their financial lives. And at the same time, they have this mindset battle and this something that has been kind of implanted in their nervous system that they had no control over,
Mhm.
for that to be there, and having the opportunity. And sometimes self-sabotage again presents itself, and so it's really interesting. We do the inner work, literally everything else changes. Maybe we decide, not to watch that thing on TV that makes us feel like we need to look a certain way, right?
Mm,
Or whatever's in the magazines and whatever's still kind of like latent energy around expectations, right? That the patriarchy has about how women should
yeah.
look and be, and all these anti-wrinkle commercials
Oh
and
my
everything else.
goodness.
So
Hmm.
it's very interesting to see how we can start to make different decisions and how this is all coming from within. And what I think is going to be really beautiful, Valerie, is through the beautiful, incredible work that you're doing, and helping women really go within all of our collective going within and healing this trauma and
Yeah.
this PSD is going to allow us to make different decisions, and our collective
Mm,
making different decisions, that's our buying power. Okay, so we start to
yeah.
change what's going on in the media and everything else. I mean, Me Too is a perfect example of this. We say, no, we're making a different decision now, and it changes the whole game, because
Yeah.
women, I mean, we are consumers. we
Yes.
are we're definitely consumers. So we're making a lot of these buying decisions, and it's going to have to turn around because the old models are going to realize that they don't fit with us and our mindsets anymore. So this really is game changing work, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. It's very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, it is powerful, and thank you for your words of acknowledgement and resonance and what you've just shared. We could have a whole big big conversation around that.
Oh, I could
But
talk to you all day. I know.
but I just want to highlight a few things from the PSD perspective
Yes.
of how we what challenges women run into with money, and acknowledge that
Mm,
there is a lot of shame in,
yeah.
and I was in that boat. I'll share a personal story to
Yes. I
kind of
love that.
out my own shame, and hopefully it will be helpful for listeners. Before I got married, and I got married when I was 28. Um, Before I got married, I was already an earner, and I was smart with my money. Interestingly, I was smart with my money. I was making some smart investments, and was actually able to. When we got married, I
Mhm.
had enough money saved up for a down payment on a house,
Mm,
and so that was a really good start. And
yeah.
then I got married, and it's like I took a bite of the poisoned apple, as I call
Mm,
it right now, the patriarchy poisoned apple. And I
yeah.
see that happens for women in relationships a lot. It's like with every stage of life, marriage, children, or even as early as getting our first period, there is that conditioning that seeps in. The poison seeps in. Oh, you are a part of this patriarchal system now. And as a woman, we see you this way. And so what happened was that I was smart about money before, but I became dumb overnight.
Mm,
Overnight, Katie, I became dumb.
mm,
I completely detached from money.
mm,
I was abdicating financial decisions,
mm,
actually money management, to my husband for no reason, actually, for
mm.
no reason other than patriarchal programming,
Other than,
PSD.
yeah, yeah. Because maybe there was something within you that had been programmed, right? To
So
say that men
much
were,
so.
sorry, what?
So much so. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And where did that come? It came from that generational
Yeah.
programming, right? That you talked
And
about.
yeah,
That's
and
powerful,
so
right? I mean,
powerful.
you get into a relationship and then it's like immediately handing over our power. And to our listeners out there, how many times have we done that, whether it's with money or some other aspect of
Yeah.
our existence? And
Thank you.
right, how many times a day are we giving away our power? There's one thing I realize that I still do, and it kind of annoys me.
Hmm.
I'm like saying sorry for things that I'm not responsible for.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself doing that, or had you ever done that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, totally. And I've been working very consciously on that. And with my daughter as well, and she knows, it's like a little joke now, like I when she says sorry about something, I say, no, say thank you, mommy, thank you for reminding me, don't say
mm,
sorry.
yeah.
And then she makes a joke of it, like, sorry, mommy, for saying sorry. Like, but it is ingrained. And going back to money, because it's just so hot, I can't stop talking about money, because it is our power to change the world. It is.
Yes.
Owning this power
Mm,
has never been safe. It is not safe in our system. That's what I want women to really hear. So in my marriage, I was making a lot of money.
mhm,
I was making a lot of money, and it was all seeping through my fingers. It was just like, psh, where
mm,
was it going? I
yeah.
can't even tell you. Like, I didn't have a gambling problem. I know
Yep.
that, but it was going away. It was like playing tennis. So I was coming into my court, and I was bouncing it back out. Before marriage, I was able to save enough for a down payment on a house. And in the marriage, I saved nothing.
Mm,
Nothing. And then there came a point where the tables turned, and I became the sole breadwinner. And that's when that programming really showed up. I didn't know that I had it so ingrained, that conditioning that a man is supposed to provide. And when I became the only breadwinner, oh my, did that show up.
yeah.
I was livid. I was like, I didn't sign up for that. I got married. I'm supposed to be okay now. And
Mm,
mind you, I always worked. I never not worked. And yet
mhm.
that was still there. And my mother worked, by the way, all her life, but that condition, and my grandmother, coincidentally, they always did. So it's not like I come from a line of stay-at-home women. Either it's so deep, it's much deeper than personal, it's collective,
Yeah.
it's inherited, it's big. And so recognizing for me, and this is a big part of what I help women do, is own their power. Own the power in every
Mm.
power in not being apologetic, not just in little things saying sorry, but it's bigger things, how women show up. Sometimes I work with high powered women. I see them on stage and they're saying all the right things, but
Mm.
their postures are apologetic. Their voice
Wow.
is apologetic. It's like,
Yeah.
let me take up as little space as I can.
Yep.
I'll say the right things,
Say
but
the right. Yep.
yeah, do you see that too?
Yeah. Yes. You know, I love that so much. How are we apologizing when we're not just apologizing, just through our actions and our ways of being?
Mhm.
We're almost being apologetic, right?
Yeah.
Which is so fascinating. I hadn't even, looked at it that way until you just said that. That's so interesting. But yeah,
And
how many ways in which do we find ways to apologize for who we are and what we want by, like you
mm,
said, not taking up space, for saying all the right things, wearing all the right things,
mhm,
body types and things like that, instead of
mhm.
just, and for some of us, I think too, there has been a level of not even exploring what we really want
Yes, thank
because
you. Yes.
society has already outlined it for us.
Oh, that is a deeper cut for sure, Katie. I'm so glad you went there. It's, ooh. So the choices that we make on autopilot, that is pre-programmed, the choices that you've mentioned before, like buying things because we think that's what society expects from us, like let's say designer clothes or
Yep.
the makeup, anti-aging or
Yeah.
diet programs, etc.
Yeah.
They're all sold. And the one litmus test that I now use that have saved me thousands of dollars, thank you very much, the litmus test is this being sold to me on shame? Is
Mm.
this sold to me on shame, on
Wow.
not being good enough, not looking good enough, or not knowing enough? I actually recently went to a
Wow.
women's empowerment circle, which is very interesting because it's very rampant in these circles as well.
Yeah,
And
that too.
something was being sold, and the whole room was just like filling out forms. And I was sitting there almost in tears because it was being
Mm.
sold 100% as, well, poor little you don't know shit about what you're doing. But
Oh,
only if you buy this thing, we'll
yeah.
tell you everything you need to know. And I'm like, oh my God, no, no.
That's,
And these women,
yeah.
I actually, like, I'm not just saying that. I know these women. They're professionals.
Mm.
They could teach and they could, right now, they can take up space. They can be on their platforms. But instead, again, they're buying on the premise that they don't know. And when my clients come to work with me, they've already unfortunately wasted a lot of money, time, and energy on that. And then they
Yeah.
woke up and they recognized that the only thing really that is getting in the way are the invisible inner barriers. They already
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
They can do things. They have a proven record
Yeah.
and they believe in themselves just enough, but they do need some help to finally stop wasting time and energy and money on battling that inner critic,
Yeah.
distraction, lack of focus, because it comes from PSD. It doesn't come from
Yeah.
themselves. So that's my little rant on the litmus test
Oh
on
gosh.
buying on something that makes you feel less than, like you're
Yeah.
not capable, and versus investing in something that empowers you. I invest a whole bunch now in things that empower me, but that's the litmus test that I use
I
always,
think,
always, always.
and I think that's stunning. And it's so powerful. And I think it's a really great way. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think this is a really great way to keep ourselves in check, so that we know we're buying from a happy place.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch upon something you said quick too. Um, you know, it's interesting. There are a lot of there are a lot of people out there in the personal development realm, and I think one thing that we kind of all need to do as feminine leaders is really understanding the come from, and sometimes how, unfortunately, because this is such a pervasive concept, that there's still a lot of this in the personal development realms themselves. And there's some really great teachers out there, right, who are still maybe unintentionally,
Yeah.
right, because they don't realize they have it going on within their nervous systems, teaching from a place of, unintentionally shaming people.
Yeah.
And that's where I get a little bit upset still,
Yeah.
is where I see that it's like, wow, we really can't, I don't think for me, I don't think it's very effective to um, coach or teach people from a place of unintentionally shaming
Yeah.
them. And that's where I
Yeah.
get a little bit upset still, is where I see that. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that anyone who's leading in a space, to remind themselves to keep that part of themselves in check, because when you're responsible for, more than yourself, right,
Yeah.
it's so important to try our best to not allow that to carry over, because that is one thing that personal development does. A lot of women go into personal development thinking they have to fix themselves. What they end
Mm-hmm.
up realizing, hopefully, is that they're fine just the way they are, and that really
Mm-hmm.
the journey is traveling back to your authentic self. But unfortunately, like I said, there's a lot of still a lot of judgment, a lot of shaming stuff going on in this realm. So that's
Yeah.
something to keep in check as well. Because you're talking
Yeah.
about being a consumer, that's another realm in which many women are consumers, and to just keep that in mind,
Yeah.
and I've done a
That's
mix of things, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. That's how we change that industry as well. And
Yeah.
every industry by voting with our dollars. It's
Yes.
very powerful.
Yes.
And as you said, for those who are in a leadership position, that checking yourself, it it comes down to the inner journey. It comes down to feeling happy,
Hmm.
fulfilled, free within yourself, so that you don't have the shame, the internal shame, because the only way that shaming comes out against somebody else, shaming, judgment,
Hmm.
criticism, is because we carry it within. And I want that point to really stick. If
Yeah.
you suffer from it, if it pains you having thoughts of judgment
Mm.
against others, it pains you, then you know there is self judgment. And again, let's take away the shame about
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
because we all are in the same boat. It is
Yeah.
not our fault. We all need
It's not.
healing. And the more we heal self judgment or self shame, the more we heal that propensity to have it toward others. And that is profound transformation. And
Mm.
you said it earlier on, I don't want that point to get passed by, that sometimes we don't know even fully, deeply our own true, authentic desires.
Mm.
And that I see every time I work with a woman, even if she thinks that she does, it's not yet usually fully unfurled. And the reason is because we are afraid of our own bigness. We are
Mm.
petrified of our desires. There's a good reason it's never been safe ever to be a powerful woman, and there's nothing that's more dangerous to the patriarchal status quo than the woman who is in touch with her desire. Think about it. There's nothing more
Mm.
dangerous than a
It's
woman
true.
who knows her desire. That's why the desire is very well protected by the prison guards, by those trauma defenses.
Yeah.
I actually share in the supplemental materials for the
Mm.
book
Hmm.
that are free and available on the website. Even if you haven't read the book yet, you can check them out there at drvalerie.com
Awesome.
book dash resources. There is a meditation on desire.
Mm.
And that is a
Oh, I
very
can't wait to do
powerful tool. Yeah. I
that.
do
I'm all over it,
and
Val.
and you know what, Katie? I do it regularly.
Yeah.
Um, I do it regularly, Katie, because the thing is, the desire also keeps showing up more and more as we heal more and more. And I do my healing work every day because I'm no longer available to settle for the crumbs, stale crumbs of the patriarchal
Mm,
table of
yeah.
what I can have in terms of influence and impact and happiness and money and love and
Mhm.
freedom. Not available for that. I want the whole cake. I want the
Yes.
whole feast. And for
Yes.
that, yeah, and the path is healing. And the more we heal, the more our desire becomes available, and the more it becomes available, the more it becomes the North Star of our life. And then my business is aligned with the desire. And it's a very different situation than running a business from a place of survival. uh,
Yeah.
then my personal life is aligned, my schedule is aligned, and every choice I make. So again, I don't waste money, energy, and time on things that are completely off,
Mhm.
but everything gets focused and directed and help bring that desire into reality. And that's what I desire for every
Mm.
woman out there, because that's how we change our own destinies and that's how we change the world.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on with us today. What an incredible and enlightening conversation we had.
My
I'm so
pleasure.
thrilled to have you on. Would you like to speak into, I think you have a program coming up, is that right?
I do. I do. We have a wonderful journey where women who are listening to that call of their true purpose in life, maybe they've already caught that voice.
Mhm.
Maybe they're already on that mission, or maybe they're earlier on and really just listening, getting in touch. And these are women who are like myself, are no longer available to settle for less, no longer available to stay in survival, and they want to thrive. So I have a program called The Thriving Solution, because that's exactly what it is. We gave you a step-by-step solution to identifying the PSD, the different layers of trauma, where it's lodged in your mind, in your body, how it shows up in your choices and actions, where it comes from, because it's not yours,
Mhm.
and um, from there, we teach you how to work to transform those trauma defenses, the prison guards, and evolve them into bodyguards. So
Mm.
instead of keeping you safe by
Mm.
keeping you locked up, they can journey with you, the same protective mechanisms in your nervous system. They can help you reach the cherry blossoms. They can help you grab your cake, your feast, your desire in every area, because that is within you, but it's been locked up and used in the service of keeping you in prison by all that trauma. And in this program, we unlock it. And
Mm.
that is the program of mastering the game of how good can it get versus the game of how much can I bear.
Yeah.
And I know which game I want to play in my life. So if you are resonating, if you are a woman who is also not available to play the game of how much can I bear, and who reaches for cherry blossoms and knows that healing is involved and knows that it's beneficial to have other women on the journey around and guidance. By the way, this is the only science-based program in
Mm.
helping women achieve their happiness and fulfillment by healing that internalized trauma of oppression.
Mm.
And that and that is the invitation. So on my website, drvalerie.com, there is a button at the bottom of that page that says waitlist. Just raise your hand, click that button so that I know to send you the info. That's as simple as that. And we're going to have a free training coming up where you'll learn more in depth about everything that
Cool.
we've talked about. And then there's going to be an invitation for those who want to take a step further and really have that support and community on the journey.
Wow.
And then later on, we also have a live experience coming up where we go even deeper, and you'll learn all about that if you basically click the button and let us know that you want to hear about it.
That is so exciting. I'm on board 1,000%, by the
I
way.
am so excited, Katie. That
Yeah,
that is the journey for the ages.
this is this is revolutionary,
Thank
literally.
you.
Wow, how cool. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared with us today. I feel like we covered so much. Um, and I really look forward to hearing what our beautiful listeners have to say about it as well. So really, thank you so much for joining us today. And guys, everyone listening to this, we have Valerie mentioned the link, but it's also posted in the podcast. So make sure to check that out.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I also want to mention sometimes people get intimidated.
Mhm.
Like, and again, that's PSD, right? Women
There
get
you go.
intimidated, like, oh,
Pops up
she's so
everywhere.
important. She wrote a book. Like, I can't reach out to her. You can reach out to me. You can send me an email, Valerie@drvalerie.com. You can connect on social. You can DM me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Dr. Valerie Rein. The handle is in both places. I love hearing from people. I love seeing women reading the book, sharing about it. I will always repost the Instagram stories where women share their takeaways, and then we usually connect and we chat and I answer questions. So please know that you are super important. You are a part of this
Yes.
movement. You are a part of changing the world, and I want to be connected with you and celebrate you and support you as best I can every step of the way. So please don't fall prey to PSD, and do take steps to connecting. Let's do this together.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. This is such a great circle moment. Yes, love it, love it. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dr. Valerie. I really appreciate your presence today. And I have a feeling that our listeners are really, really going to resonate with what you shared as well.
I'm excited, Katie. Thank you so much for holding space for these deep conversations. You're a wonderful interviewer. I
Mhm.
had a blast talking to you today, and thank you, everyone who tuned in.
Me too. Thank you so much.